Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Hokyoji Sunday Dharma Talk. So nice to see so many of you this morning. This morning we have Reverend Myo-O Habermas-Scher to be our speaker. She's a Soto Zen Buddhist priest and teacher in the lineage of Katagiri Roshi. And she recently retired from a long-time position as an interfaith staff chaplain at the U of M Medical Center, Fairview. Earlier in her career, she was a dancer and choreographer, and she also maintains a practice as a somatically based voice coach. She received Dharma Transmission from Dokai Georgesen in 2012. And we're very happy to have her today. So now let's see, Myo-O, you need to unmute yourself.
Good morning. I'm gonna make myself disappear from the screen so I can just see you. Oh. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'll wait till everybody gets settled over there in the Zendo. Okay. That's good. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Maybe, Ekyo, could you mute?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Hi, it's nice to see everyone. My sister is here from Evanston, Illinois. My little sister. Okay. All right. So today, the title of my talk is Things Disappear. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah? All right, good. Okay. Okay. So, first, I'd just like us to kind of settle down where we're sitting in the state of Minnesota. I just want to kind of breathe into the lineage of where we are physically. So this land that we're on has been the homeland of the Dakota and the Anishinaabe for centuries and centuries. So I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate that. And all the labors, innumerable labors that have brought us to be wherever we are at this moment, to just feel this in our bodies. It's amazing, just this moment. A long time ago at the burial grounds, Indian Mounds Park, across the river from Clouds and Water in St. Paul, I was present at one time for a young Dakota performance artist. She brought a bullhorn with her to speak her pain of loss into the air. And I really felt my body resonating with her, with that place, and with the word ancestors, which she held strongly in her own heart. Because I had this thought at that time, if this land had not been here to come to, I would not exist. My ancestors would all have been murdered in Europe. So I just hold this complicated situation. There's so many layers present in just that, knowing how do I hold all of this with respect. So this week, I'm sure you all know that we are in the midst of the trial of Derek Chauvin, and I'm holding Mr. Ben Crump and Mr. George Floyd's family in my heart and my consciousness, as well as my city, Minneapolis, and Derek Chauvin and the police department. Again, so many layers. What's happening? Tuesday evening, I had the wonderful opportunity to hear Ralph Steele, who is an African-American Vipassana teacher, offer the teachings of the Buddha at an online vigil that was put on by Common Ground Meditation Center. I was so deeply grateful for Ralph's presence and how the healing rays of the Buddha Dharma flowed from him, like just flowing off his body, like, you know, when they say rose petals fell from the sky, that's what it was like for me to hear him. Dokai often quotes Dogen saying, "It's rare to practice what is rare." And that's how I felt about hearing Ralph Steele. Completely himself, completely the Buddha Dharma, completely in the midst of everything. So he's going to go back online another time with Common Ground. If you get a chance to tune in, I just highly recommend it. After he was done sharing, I just felt my whole body expanding, like my heart, my intercostal muscles, my collarbone, like full. That was the first time in regards to what's happening in my city. That was the first time I felt such a thing. So how do we open? How do I open? How do we open to everything that's happening with compassion and wisdom? So 3 Dharma seals can guide us. Anicca, impermanence. Anatta, no separate self. And dukkha, nirvana, or suffering and freedom. So with the understanding of no separate self, we can open in our heart bodies to all of this. With the understanding of anicca, impermanence, we can understand, we can more than understand, realize how all conditioned things are constructed. So we can know this intimately. And with the understanding of dukkha, nirvana, we can inhabit the transformation of suffering into freedom. So we could just say, like, suffering, we feel that contraction are unpleasant sensations, or, well, it's mostly sensations, right? We can feel that in the body, and freedom feels like relief, feels like space. Like the whole Buddhist project was relief with wisdom. I heard somebody say this week that Buddhist practitioners are just about getting peaceful. So I want to say that's the doorknob. That's not even the doorway to Buddhist practice. We have to have some stability. We have to have some refuge in order to be present for the fire of karma burning with compassion. So if you hear someone tell you that Buddhist practice is just about getting all cozy with yourself, please run away fast, because that is not the case. But it's also okay to feel some relief occasionally. It's okay. So the freedom is the freedom to act from bodhicitta, from that call inside, the awakening mind, to act from there instead of to act from suffering, which of course creates more suffering. What's that famous verse from the Dhammapada? Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is cured or healed. This is the ancient and eternal law. Yeah. So now I want to return to something very particular and simple and quiet. A few weeks ago, let's see, maybe a month ago, when there was still snow everywhere, I went for a walk with Tomoe-san on the snowy streets of Ridgefield, because we had to be outside, right, because of COVID. So does everybody here know Tomoe-san? Who's Tomoe-san? If you don't know, yes, okay. If you don't know who's Tomoe-san, I'll say she is Katagiri Roshi's widow. And she taught most of us how to sew our rakusu and our robes. According to Tomoe-san, she turned 92 years old on February 16th. However, later, a Dharma sister told me, no, she's not 92, she's 89. But I'm going to go with Tomoe-san's idea that she's 92. She is so tiny. She's like a little twig. I feel like a giant when I go walking with her. And I'm small, but I feel like a giant. So she's little, frail, and we walked a long, long ways. And then I thought, that's enough. I should bring her home. But she wanted to keep going. So we kept going. She told me that she spent a few hours locating her cell phone in her room recently. But she remembers buying a hand-knit bodysuit that I made, that I knit to get at the MZMC summer rummage sale in the 1970s. So she remembers things about me that I don't remember. But she couldn't find her cell phone. She taught us as we sewed to be quiet, and to pray while we sewed with each stitch. She taught us to pay respectful attention to her instructions, even though I could not always follow them. But anyway, it's not necessary to understand everything. Just always have respect. Tomoe-san taught me this, not even with words. Tomoe-san is disappearing. In fact, she told me that she's ready to disappear anytime. I felt anxious in my heart when I hear this because I will grieve a great deal when Tomoe-san disappears. Even though she tells me she's disappearing, she is walking firmly with joy. Even though she's wandering with her cane into the middle of the street sometimes, she's completely wandering. Nothing is missing. Don't worry, I was keeping track of the street so that she wouldn't wander into a car. So I would like to share with you this poem by David Whyte. The only choice we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability, how we become larger and more courageous and more compassionate through our intimacy with disappearance. Should I read that again? Okay, let me read it again. The only choice we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability, how we become larger and more courageous and more compassionate through our intimacy with disappearance. It's the intimacy with disappearance and the intimacy with appearance that can invite the vulnerability that's liberating. So we're considering that everything is disappearing, anicca, but considering it with every cell of our bodies, our hearts, and our minds. That's our practice. I think it's really courageous. And vulnerability is kind of like the door. So if stability and a little peacefulness is the doorknob, then vulnerability is like the doorway. Becoming larger, we become larger, he says, David Whyte says. It points to our becoming more permeable, looser, less resistant to what is appearing and disappearing. So that's different than upholding any particular stance, even a brilliant stance. The lens we see through is collapsing while still completely intimate, like falling through space. So that makes me think of bodhicitta, awakening mind, our powerful wish to save all beings from suffering. And here is a quote I love a lot, I've used it a few times, that Joseph Goldstein, who is a Vipassana teacher, shared from Shapkar, a Tibetan yogi. So Shapkar says, the mind's nature is vivid as a flawless piece of crystal, intrinsically empty, naturally radiant, ceaselessly responsive. The mind's nature is vivid as a flawless piece of crystal, intrinsically empty, naturally radiant, ceaselessly responsive. So in this quote, both absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta are illuminated. Both the falling through space with vivid intimacy and ceaseless responsiveness arise together. So here's a little gatha, a beautiful gatha, to help us remember how to become larger. So this is the Bodhicitta Gatha, or the desire to awaken phrase. May my precious heart's desire bloom where it has not been seen. May the blossom's blessed fire arise and free all suffering beings. Should I say that one more time? May my precious heart's desire bloom where it has not been seen. May the blossom's blessed fire arise and free all suffering beings. Tomoe-san is clear with me that she's disappearing. She laughs as she shares this. The week of Tomoe's 92nd birthday, February 16th, two friends of mine, Sarah and Mary, completely disappeared from this world. Each of these radiant beings were filled with bodhicitta. Their spiritual practices were deep and continuous over many, many years. One was Jewish and one was Episcopalian. And they were both much younger than Tomoe-san. However, I noticed that they appeared within their disappearance. They were both so intimate and precise with their vulnerability, not turning away from anything that was happening. Mary was even trying to get her taxes done before she died so that her husband would be okay. That's kind of mind-blowing. The kind of upekkha or equanimity that she had. And that brings me to this wonderful koan that some of us already know a lot. It's Dao Wu's I Won't Say. It's in the Blue Cliff record, number 55. So I want to give you the familial historical context, because this is like Zen gossip. This teacher who lived on that mountain told that student this, and then he went there. That's what this is. But I think I don't know. I like to know this stuff. So Dao Wu lived from 769 to 835 CE. He was a disciple of Yao Shan, a very famous Zen master, who died in 834 CE. And Yao Shan was a disciple of Shitu. Remember Shitu? Song of the Grass-Roofed Hermitage? And he died in 790 CE. And so another character in this is Jin Yuan, who was born around 800 CE. I guess he never died. And was a student of Dao Wu's. And Xing Xuan was Dao Wu's Dharma heir, and he died in 888 CE. So you're going to hear about these people. That's why I want to say. So here's the story. One day, Dao Wu, accompanied by his disciple Jian Yuan, went to visit a family in which a funeral was about to take place in order to express sympathy. Jian Yuan knocked on the coffin. Tell me, please, alive or dead? Dao Wu said, I don't say life, I don't say death. Jian Yuan said, why won't you tell me? Dao Wu said, I won't say, I won't say. On their way home, Jian Yuan said, please, master, say it to me right away. If you don't, I shall hit you. Dao Wu said, strike me if you like, but I will never say. Jianwan struck Dao Wu. That was kind of a really big no-no. That was the ticket to leaving the monastery and going to find another teacher with great compassion and respect. So can you imagine the teacher takes his disciple? You know, this is how we visit people who, you know, in a family where someone died and there's the coffin, and his disciple starts knocking on the coffin and kind of acting up in front of people from the village. You know, I'm just trying to like imagine this scene, you know, that's kind of not great behavior. But still, Dao Wu doesn't say, shh, stop that, be quiet. This is not how you behave. He didn't say that. He said, I'm not going there with you. I'm just not going there. Sometime later, Dao Wu passed away. 35 years later, Jianwan came to Xishuang, Dao Wu's disciple, and told him the whole story. So he's been sitting with this hot coal in his heart for 35 years. You know, was it last week? No, 2 weeks ago, Ekyo talked about life and death. Right? Is that right? So, yeah, Jianwan's just like burning. He can't get over it. He can't get under it. He can't get around it. He can't get through it. Xishuang said, you know, so he told the story and he was like, well, what would you say? And Xishuang said, I don't say life. I don't say death. Jianwan said, why don't you tell me? Xishuang said, I won't say. I won't say. Upon hearing these words, Jianwan attained sudden realization. So what happened during those 35 years? It took all that time for Jianwan's heart-mind to turn, for the fire of his bodhicitta and his longing to burn through the hot coal of this enormous investigation, to release the coal to drop into the fire. If either of the teachers had doused the fire of his longing with limited words, they would have cheated him. So what is going on there for us, for me, for you? Are we appearing or disappearing? Are circumstances appearing or disappearing? Are we suffering or are we free? So Easter was last week, right? Is that right? Easter, yeah. So I happen to be on the board of the Episcopal House of Prayer, which is a contemplative, it's a beautiful place if you ever want to go and hang out there. It's on the grounds of St. John's University in Abbey. Anyway, I get their newsletter because I'm on the board. So the director, Christine Lunemunger, wrote about spiritual dynamism in her spring newsletter. And she talked about Cynthia Bourgeot. Do you guys know Cynthia Bourgeot? She's a Christian mystic, like contemporary. I think she lives in Maine. She's out there. Anyway, Cynthia wrote that she posited the possibility that Jesus may very well have found his way back from the depths of hell in those days between his crucifixion and resurrection, precisely because someone, Mary Magdalene, was waiting with him on the other side of death. So this is what Christine said. If the nature of reality is marked by a dynamic continuum of matter, energy, and spirit, why do we accept a sense that our loved one is now gone? Rather, in a true spirit of dynamism, why do we not expect even more communication and presence from those who have crossed the veil, now unencumbered by the heavy weight of matter and flesh? Is Jesus alive or dead? Is Mr. George Floyd dead or alive? Are we alive or dead? Our wonderful ancestors, who's us really, in this koan, knock on the coffin and knock on each other with the fire of their intimacy with that question. So I'm asking myself, what are the ways in which I am not intimate with myself and everyone? In the impermanent circumstances, no separate self, transforming suffering nirvana of our everyday craziness. I can't say. I can't say. Let's not cheat ourselves. So I'll give you David White again to end. The only choice we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability, how we become larger and more courageous and more compassionate through our intimacy with disappearance. So that's all I have to say, but you can unmute yourself to express something or have a question or a wondering or a sharing. It's most welcome. Thank you. Yoku-san.
I just wanted to thank you, not only for the Tomoe story, and I get to spend time disappearing with her as well, but just especially for the doorknob and the door. I found that very, I don't know, helpful. Thank you for that.
I loved hearing the Dao Wu story again. 5 years ago when my mother died, I was planning to go to, she died a week before Rohatsu, and I had been planning to go to Hokyoji, and I thought, oh, I have to cancel. I was in grief. But I thought, no, that's just where I need to be. So I went for the weekend. And Dokai, the very first Dharma talk, used that koan.
Wow.
And at first I was like, and then I received it at some level. I got it, that my mother is alive and dead. You know, she's alive and dead and very much alive. And thank you so much for reminding me of this precious koan and that aspect of truth that is so hard to grasp. It's so hard to grasp. Thank you.
Grandson, Ryushin.
These are words from from Kikon's transcriptions of Katagiri from Blue Cliff Record, case 18. So these are two different parts. What's left is really important because this is the quality of life. Life is already a name you put on it, but you have to know the quality of life. You say death, but that death is a name of death, which you put on it. You have to know the real quality of death. What is the quality of death? And then a few pages later, he says something that really means a lot to me. Now I can really treasure the core of human existence, which my teacher had demonstrated while he was alive. That means not the logical aspect, not the matter of his life in failure or his life in success, completely beyond this. As a total picture, you can really feel something. So now I really appreciate his life. Whatever he did, whatever he said to me, I really appreciate. Something which he always taught me is not some teaching in the possession of a form, so-called success or failure or pros or cons. It's completely beyond that. Of course, you can see those, but the more important part of human life is completely beyond there. From his life as a whole, you can really get something. This is very common for human beings. When your parents die, when your brothers die, when your sisters die, anyway, after people's death, you really feel something, don't you think? This is very true. But while they are alive, you're really ignorant because we are always looking at the front, trying to understand logically, theoretically.
Okay-san. Hi.
Me?
Yeah, did you raise
Oh,
your
okay.
hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer like a counter viewpoint. When I think of Tomoe-san, I think she's gonna live a lot longer than I am. So, so she's gonna see me disappear before I see her disappear.
Oh
So
my.
that's anyway, just a thought.
Roger.
Thank you very much, Myo. I value what you've said very, very much. I have always struggled with impermanence my whole life. I am particularly annoyed every time I hear the word someone passed away. And the reason is that I've come to kind of understand that my struggle with impermanence, I think, has a lot to do with who I am and where I was raised. I'm an American Westerner, that kind of thing. And what I heard you say with Koan and with what this topic is that we cannot say alive or dead because they are the same. At least I've always looked at it that way. And I've even struggled within this teaching about the idea of why do we speak about impermanence versus permanence, in the sense that I am both alive and dead at the same time. It's kind of a concept I've tried to come to in order to reconcile my existence, and that it's helped to comfort me in that sense. In that this is, I can't state that I'm alive without at the same time stating that I disappear. So what you've said to me kind of resonates with the way I've had to come to grips with impermanence. And I don't know whether it works for me, I guess, this idea that they are one. And this dichotomy that we have while we're alive, that there is a passing away or even a disappearance. I still struggle with, but in the sense that I am both here and not here at the same time. I don't know how well that works for anybody, but it kind of works for me, and it helps me come to grips with changes, because change is all around us and that kind of thing. And I've struggled with change a lot my whole life. So this is how I've kind of come to grips with this. And since I've been practicing, I find that it's a little easier even for me to understand it this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reggie.